Editing Anna here. Apparently I still cannot film an intro. So, hi pretty people, my name is Anna and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a reading vlog for Once There Was a War by John Steinbeck, but it's also kind of going to be a comparison between Farewell to Arms and Once There Was a War. This is all in the frame of the book club from Emmy reads and Carolyn Marie reads. It's called A Game of Tomes. If you don't know it, check it out. It's really cool. And let's get into it. Hey pretty people! This is going to be a reading vlog for Once There Was a War by John Steinbeck. I just wanted to hop on here real quick and tell you that I have already read a bit of the book yesterday in the evening. I'm on page 54 now from about 200 pages and I already like it better than A Farewell to Arms. My friend Hannah is coming tomorrow and we're gonna do like a readathon, so I'm probably going to read a bit more in this book tomorrow. Just a quick update. It has been more than a week since I did the readathon with my friend Hannah. If you haven't seen the video yet, it's linked in the description. And I shamefully have to admit I have not read even one more page in Once There Was a War. I've kind of been in a reading slump actually, like the past 2 weeks. I don't know what it is, but I have not been able to actually read. I've read a few more diary entries from Madly Deeply, the Alan Rickman diaries, but I've really not been reading a lot. So I definitely do want to keep reading this today, and I'm gonna give you an update later. So it is the next day, and I do have read quite a few more pages. I am on page 103 now from Once There Was a War, and maybe I should say it is the 25th of February already, and Emmy's and Carolyn's live show for this for the first two books from January and February is going to be tomorrow, 6 p.m. my time, which would be 12 p.m. EST, I think. But yeah, it's 6 p.m. CET, Central European Time. And I have only read like 50 more pages, so I still have about 85 to go. But I kind of got sidetracked because I got this puzzle, which has 1,000 pieces, and I've been puzzling for hours. This is what I've been doing for the last few hours. And I need to keep reading this book because I have, as I said, about 85 pages left. And tomorrow's the live show. But I've been busy puzzling and watching Criminal Minds. So yeah, I will see to it that I have the book finished by the time of the live show. And I'll even try to upload this video before the live show. I'm going to tell you what I thought about the book and what I thought about both books in comparison tomorrow. I'm back and I have just finished Once There Was a War, really just in time for the live show, because the live show is gonna be in 20 minutes, so I kind of need to rush my my points that I wanted to mention before the live show, because I have decided to post this video as usual on Tuesday. So I am going to watch the live show later and then tell you what my afterthoughts like after the live show are. But in general, I have to say this to me was better, or like I liked it more than Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms, because even though this is technically a non-fiction work, because these are actual correspondence letters that were sent back to the US, this felt so much more in touch with the war. I know that Hemingway has this whole speech about being truthful and only like being so honest in his writings and not making it too pretty, and like the dialogue really reflected that, and you could actually see like some of the unpleasant parts that life just has to offer, which is not what I'm criticizing about Hemingway. Like I kind of liked the dialogues because it felt like real people, but other than that, I just didn't care for any of the fictional characters in Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. Like I don't know why, but I was so detached from everyone. And regarding the war itself, it didn't feel like Hemingway had seen the war, which is such a weird thing to say because he did fight in World War One, and he wrote this book based on his experiences in the war. But with Steinbeck being a war correspondent and like reading these correspondences that he did write right then and there, it feels a lot more real. And even though you have to acknowledge that these are letters that are being published in the US and that they're written for like the so-called home front, they need to keep people engaged in the war. It's basically propaganda, right? It's basically propaganda. But this still felt so much more like the war. But at the same time, it showed like the mundane reality, what is happening at war, like in the troops, that there's so many mundane things that just settle in at the front when they're not in battle, like right now. About the parts of like the ugly parts of the war, there wasn't much told in here. We had a few mentions of like the stench of blood and like seeing someone die, but when it comes to the ugliness of the war, Hemingway did the better job. But when it comes to, I feel like, reality of the war, I felt like Steinbeck's was so much more convincing. But I did have to like remind myself constantly that this is propaganda. It was written for the people at home who do not see the war and who need to stay in favor of the war. But let me look something up from Steinbeck's introduction. The war I speak of, however, may be memorable because it was the last of its kind. Our civil war has been called the last of the gentlemen's wars. And the so-called Second World War was surely the last of the long global wars. The next war, if we are so stupid as to let it happen, it will be the last of any kind. There will be no one left to remember anything, and if that's how stupid we are, we do not, in a biological sense, deserve survival. That was so impactful to me, like that really stuck in my brain for a few days. Here's also, he mentioned himself that they only reported like a part of the war. He says, yes, we wrote only a part of the war, but at the time we fervently believed, that it was the best thing to do. And perhaps that is why, when the war was over, novels and stories by ex-soldiers proved so shocking to a public which had been carefully protected from contact with the crazy hysterical mass. So even though this is also like censored in some parts, it was left in the text when the censors removed some sentences. So it wasn't only that the correspondents only wanted to picture the pretty or like the heroic or patriotic parts of the war, but they had to. They weren't allowed to go against the war effort, it was called, and also they weren't, like, there was a lot of things that they weren't allowed to say, which also Hemingway mentions in A Farewell to Arms too, that whenever a soldier wrote a letter to like his home base, the censors went over it like heavily and took so much out of the letters. But yeah, this is immediate reports, or like rather immediate reports. It's kind of chaotic, and you sometimes see it in his writing, in Steinbeck's writing, that he didn't have like a calm space to write, at least not always. And I guess I kind of fell for this whole thing that these letters or these correspondences are written to make you care, and that really happened for me. So yeah, this is definitely the winner in this first round of the Game of Tomes for me, and I'm gonna go and watch the live show now. Alright, sorry for the drastic lighting change. It is after the live show now. I always love joining Emma and Carolyn for their live shows. And so yeah, after the live show, first thing, super funny, coinciding, Emmy read the same quote from Steinbeck's introduction as I read to you earlier, so that's kind of funny. I guess the thing that I took the most from the live show was I was kind of surprised to see how many people preferred Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms over Once There Was a War by Steinbeck. I guess most of them said it's just because it was so blunt and impactful, because it was so unpoetic, and it was so like honest, and you know, most lives just aren't poetic or like made pretty, and it just showed that, well, people die and you move on, and that's just kind of how life is. A lot of people cried a lot with Hemingway over the story. I have to say, it didn't even make me sad. It kind of left me blank. It was impactful. I don't want to say it was bad or anything. I still gave it, I think, 3 stars. So it was like very solid, and it just left me blank. Like, I felt kind of empty, but not in a sad way, but in an impactful way. Like, seeing that, I guess I'm just not used to like literature being so blunt and not making it more pretty, kind of. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what to say about it. But in the end, Steinbeck was a better reading experience for me personally. I would love to know if you read the books, if you joined the live show, or in general, if you've read one of the books or both. What do you think of them? Let me know in the comments. And otherwise, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.